Good morning.
Good morning.
And we would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Niagara on this beautiful Sunday, April the 2nd. And to those of you who are sensitive to such matters, Palm Sunday. And to those of you who are insensitive to such matters, April 2nd, beautiful Sunday. The nice thing about us is it works both ways for us. We are who we choose to be, and that's the beauty of us. To begin our devotional service, I'm going to begin with sharing with you as opening words on love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body to be burned, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Prophecies will come to an end. Tongues will cease. Knowledge will come to an end. We know in part. We prophesy in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. Now we see in a mirror, in a riddle. Then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, then I will know fully. Now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. And that's from Corinthians 1, chapter 13. If you'll repeat with me our chalice lighting words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. If you'll now turn to in your hymnal, and to those of you who are willing and able, please arise and sing with us A Promise Through the Ages Rings, hymn number 344. 344. A promise through the ages rings that always something sings, not just in May, in Finch-filled bower, but in December's coldest hour. A note of hope sustains us all. A life is made of many things, bright stars, bleak years, and broken wings. Can it be true that through all things there's always something sings? The universal song of life. Entombed within our deep despair, our pain seems more than we can bear. But days shall pass, and nature knows that deep beneath the winter snow, a rose lies curled and hums its song. For something always, always sings. This is the message Easter brings. And deep despair and perished things, a green shoot always, always springs. And something always, always sings. Thank you. I think you did remarkably well with that. And some of you are saying, I don't care what you think. No, that's a new, kind of a new hymn to me. I haven't sang that in a very long time, so shall we just be polite and say better than what some others we have tried. So, but regardless, never give up, never give in, never surrender. If you'll turn in your hymnal to 639, and this comes to us from the first book of John, chapter 4, and it's entitled Love One Another. And I will begin with the first line, and if you'll follow me in tandem, we will affirm these truths. Let us love one another because love is from God. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us. There is no fear in love, for perfect love casts out fear. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us. Thank you. We now come to that part of our service, honoring our joys and our sorrows. I light this candle, of course, for all who suffer throughout the world, whether it be through man-made creations such as climate change and global warming, or whether it be war and rumors of war. It is during this time of year where so many different religious traditions celebrate their collective and individual faiths that we turn to that power within us, that spirit of life, asking that it inspire us to go further, to seek peace not only within ourselves, but to demonstrate and manifest peace in the world at large. Does anyone else have a joy or a sorrow they wish to share?
Well, I've just playing off your comment there about the climate and so on. Years ago, we would hear scientists talk about nuclear winter, and the idea that if ever anyone set off a nuclear blast or a series of them in war, that it would shade the earth and it would cool things off and create a terrible problem. And similarly, in recent times, due to concerns about global warming, there's been talk about dispensing particles into the upper atmosphere to shade the earth on a controlled basis, so that were that done, it would help to mitigate the effects of global warming. And then, of course, you remember Mount St. Helens, and when that happened, they went back and said, oh, well, it appeared to lower the Earth's temperature by a degree or so. Point being that if something like that happens and you get things in the upper atmosphere, it tends to shade the Earth and all that. So then you come back to the issue of global warming, and then you think, okay, well, we may not have a perfect solution. We have something of a solution that maybe we could trot out, that they know that there are ways you can put things in the air that'll shade the earth and maybe protect it. Not an ideal answer, but might help us, not hopeless. So to me, that's anybody who thinks it's hopeless, don't agree. So my thought for the day.
Amen. Thank you.
I light this candle because I'm quite concerned. My fiance was supposed to visit. He lives in Canandaigua, and he was supposed to visit yesterday, and I didn't get a phone call from him, and I've been trying his telephone, and he hasn't answered. So I'm very worried about what's happening to him. So with that, I pray for that he's doing okay wherever he is. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's kind of people-y in here today. I think I have stage fright. See? It's good to see everybody.
Today is Bryce's birthday, my son. He's 23 years old. He's all grown up, I know. He's not in school yet because, he tells me he's in a band. Mom, I'm in a band. So he does work at a pizza place, but his band is called Days Ago. I had to write it down for me. The type of people say, what does he play? I'm like, I don't know. His website says he's a psychedelic reggae funk punk power trio from Niagara Falls. So if you like that type of music, they'll be playing, they play all over, but they're playing in Niagara Falls either June or July, and I'm going to try to catch a show.
Thank you.
Why don't you
that's
catch
great.
them and bring them here?
If you guys want some reggae funk psychedelic,
Sure.
I guess.
Anyone else? Okay. Hey, listen, when we used to sing Everything's Coming Up Roses by Ethel Merman, if we can do that in a UU church, we can do reggae, funk, psychedelic, Gregorian chant with cheese, whatever, we can do it. I have to make one last comment, if I might. I get a kick. I was telling a few of you, I've just finished reading a book on climate change and global warming. It's written in 2008, The Uninhabitable Earth, catchy title. And if you go through the middle of the book, there's just one page in the middle of the book, and it says very plainly, if you have read to this part of the book, you are a very, very brave reader. And I obviously got to the middle and I got to the end, and I agree with my friend there, and it reflects in one of the recent issues of the UU Association magazine on climate change, that there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing the emotion and the spiritual desolation of despair. And the ultimate resolution for despair is to act as if, or as we used to say in self-help groups, fake it till you make it. It doesn't matter what the appearance looks like. It doesn't matter what the consensus is. But of course, I say most of us, I'd like to believe, side on the consensus of hard empirical science. But regardless of all that, you continue to just push forward and do like some of the things, the one thing you had suggested, that was in the book, and it was an interesting, it piqued my interest when you mentioned it. So no matter how prone we may be to any feelings of discouragement, or even that ultimate feeling of all is lost, despair, we are encouraged not only by ancient as well as modern religionist thinkers and scientific thinkers that it was impossible until we did it. It was impossible till we did it, so we can never give up. And of course, I love that old expression, Noah built the ark, the Titanic was built by professionals. We now come to that portion of our service where we sincerely request your generosity. We come to that portion that is referred to as our offering. And we ask that you be as generous as you possibly can be, because it helps this church to maintain the one lit candle of liberal theology and liberal philosophy in this area. And we deeply appreciate it. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Thank you. That's all right. I decided that because today is the 2nd of April, and that it was in the Christian tradition Palm Sunday, that it be appropriate that I share a little bit of what I like to call reflection or reflective reframing, because I find that in the liberal faith traditions, and of course, I've got a lot of mileage on me in the liberal traditions, whether it be through spiritualism, New Thought, or what is more often called religious science, and of course, what is, in a sense, the new love of my life, or newer love of my life, Unitarian Universalism. And I find that it always fascinates me, because I understand now what perhaps I did not. You know, we spoke earlier when we read from on love. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. And I think a lot of my previous orientations toward theology, toward my understanding of what God is, at least to me, were, for lack of a better term, very childlike. And I don't mean that to be disparaging or, you know, in any way derogatory, but it was, I accepted religion, or the religion of my upbringing, to be very literal. And you know, and when it said, this is the end of truth, that was it. There was no further revelation. There was no further upliftment. It was, this is the truth. And of course, the implication was, this is the truth that will set me free. But the only problem was that by the time I reached beyond the age of reason, by the time I was actually quite young, 13, 14 years of age, this truth didn't, whatever these truths were, and I speak for myself. This is, again, no disparaging comments about any other faith or how it functions or as people understand it. But this truth that supposedly set me free, I didn't feel particularly free. I still felt confused. I still felt hamstrung. And so I began to study the various faith traditions, and it came to me, just like it has come to so many of us, that all religious tradition, not some, not many, all religious tradition is humankind's usually sincere and honest effort to understand who they are, kind of where they came from, and have some sense of trajectory as to where they may be going. And a lot of those traditions, of course, are focused on, and it's amazing how many are focused on, this notion that this world somehow is not particularly good, didn't have a good start, and probably will have not a very pleasant end. And I'm, by the way, not talking about climate change. You know what I'm talking about. You know, of course, especially in the Christian tradition, the notion of Armageddon and Revelation, the final conflict. And there's even been series of books written, Left Behind, about the so-called rapture, where the believers are lifted up into heaven, and those of us, we're left here to fend for ourselves. God is love. The dichotomies, which I just shared one with you, were really beginning to irk me. And yet I also realized that as you know, a much wiser man than myself once said, can't we all just learn to get along? That I had to be able to identify my former beliefs, and as I was uncomfortable in my own skin, so to speak, and wanted to go forward and wanted to learn more and gain a deeper understanding and perhaps unravel some of this twisted mess that I found, at least in my own interpretation. And I found that a lot of people were not particularly interested in having meaningful dialogue. They'd have a lively debate, which is a very polite way of me sharing. They'd have a knockdown, drag-out fight using a 2x4 on me, if they could, because people are, and this is human nature, more interested in justifying what they believe. When people say, I'm only looking for the truth, That's not true. More often than not, what we're looking for is justification for what we have concluded, whether that conclusion is authentically true or not. You have only politics to look at to see how true the statement I've just made is. And so I began to study, and I thought to myself, you know, especially as I was preparing for this particular lecture, I said, you know what happened back in 1961 when, I think it was 61, if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, when the Unitarians and the Universalists decided to come together and to move forward, there was a significant kind of a seismic shift that turned them away from being a, quote, what they both started out to be, Christian denominations, and more toward a moving forward and forward and forward to a, I use the term, and people don't like me when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, a spiritualized humanism. That seems to be a dichotomy, but I'm going to leave that to you to wrestle that one out in your own mind. But anyway, to come to this dichotomy, and I thought to myself, I never learned to do things like that. I always believed in the concept of looking for the truth wherever I found it, and secondarily, taking, and it's a word I use often in my preaching and often in my teaching, reframing something. And I knew, for example, like next Sunday at our congregation in Fredonia, they will talk about the birds singing, the flowers growing, the regeneration of life. If they mention the word Jesus, it'll stick in their craw. Because a lot of people who are drawn to this have had some pretty unfortunate, even ugly experiences in Orthodox theology. And so when the UU started moving more toward humanism, that's when we became as a magnet for people who had an issue with Christian theology. And my question was always, did anybody think to reframe it? Did anybody, are there deeper meanings? Are there more interesting points of view? And I, for one, for example, being a student of Matthew Fox, former Dominican priest, John Shelby Spong, who just passed away, I think at the tender age of 94, who basically wrote one of my favorite books, recommended highly, another catchy title, Why Christianity Must Change or Die. Okay, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that. Excellent book. But the purpose of the book was to reframe, reframe the message. And back in the day of, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Emerson left the pulpit. He walked away because he was having a problem at the time deciding whether or not he could in good conscience participate in the Lord's Supper, communion. And here I come along, I'm 66 now. I know, don't look it. Thank you. But when I was 35, 40, I was ordained at 25, by the way, through one of the denominations I represented back in the day. And I began to say, there's got to be a way to not create these ridiculous walls, because there are, 2.3 billion Christians in the world. What about reframing? And so instead of teaching, for example, that this idea of communion is the transubstantiation, the mystical experience of turning wafer into the so-called body and blood of Jesus of Nazareth, what I like to call ritual cannibalism. Think about it. But somehow this went right into that mix. And I thought, well, no wonder Emerson had a problem with it. Well, Skowronski had a solution, such as it was. And I thought to myself, would it not be interesting to kind of go back in time at this thing called the Last Supper and see this man, this rabbi, this teacher say to his friends, listen, I'm going to die. I've made a lot of people very angry. I've made the Jews angry. I've made the Romans angry. Even one of you will betray me. I know I'm going to die. But I want you to remember what we've been through together. I want you to remember what I've tried to teach. And by the way, just so you know this, because this is not commonly understood, Jesus did not teach, by the way, that it's all going to end and we're all going to end up on clouds plucking harps and singing praises to his Father. Jesus talked about the kingdom being imminent. And the kingdom, where is it? It's in you. And what is imminent? That kingdom, that divine sense of life bursting forth in growth and power and the ability to do, that is right here and right now. So, but what did they do? They said, and by the way, I'm sorry, I digress. And so Jesus said, by the way, do me a favor, because it'll make me feel so much calmer in terms of what I'm about to go through. Every so often when you break bread on the Shabbat, do it in memory of me. A very human, a very tender and touching thing that one would do with family and friends. Just a simple ask of being remembered. Do this in common union. Well, the church, obviously, whether it be at the Nicene Council or 80 years after Jesus, it was only 80 years after his death that the church began to manifest itself as what we would understand to be the church. So a long time came, and that's when you started getting this business of communion in a completely different context than the one I just shared with you. Subsequently, this notion of the reanimation, of a dead body, which is against all the laws of known empirical science from that moment to today, becomes some great hope. And it was even written, if Christ be not raised, then our preaching be in vain. Which to me is, it borders, I can't even use a word that what I would describe without being pejorative. If Christ be not raised, then our preaching is in vain. What was the preaching? The preaching comes out of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful, blessed are the peacemakers. You are the salt of the earth. The preaching was that God was love. The preaching was taking that concept of love and making it predominant and full square, head and shoulders above any other concept that they had experienced to that point. To forgive, to turn the other cheek. This is revolutionary. And it's revolutionary during those times, and it's even become, ironically enough, it seems more revolutionary in our times. And so people will gather next week in so many of our brethren's churches and plant their stake, so to speak, in the ground of so-called resurrection, that somewhere, somehow, they are going to reanimate and everything's going to be just fine. That was never what Jesus taught. It was never, and I will stand on a stack of Bibles. I will stand on a stack of Marvel comic books. It doesn't matter what the stack is. I will stand on anything to have somebody come to me and prove to me the inaccuracy of these statements I am making. Because again, I encourage people to begin to read John Shelby Spong, Matthew Fox, that we are not, and Jesus knew this and he taught it beautifully, we are not inherently evil. We are not somehow less than, that we are, Jesus said, he that sees me sees the Father, he that sees the Father sees me. And by the way, he also said, the things that I do, ye shall do, and greater shall ye do, if ye but have faith. So what is he asking us to do? Have faith in yourself. What's in yourself? That divine spark, that life, that energy, that first cause, that consciousness, that God that we will never see. I have no idea what God is. Nothing. I have no idea. I have a sense, I have an inherent knowing that there is something beyond me as a so-called individual. That's all I know. But I do know, as Abraham Lincoln said, when I do good, I feel good. Or to use that, let's extrapolate that word good, I feel God. And when I do evil or negative things, I feel bad. It always makes more sense, more common sense, more psychological sense, and ultimately spiritual sense if we strive to do good or to do God. And this is what Jesus taught. And ultimately, this notion of reanimating a dead body falls into the land of man, myth, and magic. People keep waiting, crying, hoping for something or someone to save them. And here we are as humanists, or as I like to, again, as I've said before, spiritualized humanists. We say, look, if we follow the teachings, whether it be of a Jesus or a Buddha or a Lao Tzu or whomever, the message is not new, the message is the same. Learn to love yourself. Learn to accept yourself. You're okay just the way you are. Hear that. You're fine. Loved beyond comprehension, just the way you are. And if we can just turn to the person next to us, or turn to the person that we deal with at the market or wherever, and extend that compassion, that empathy, that love, just a little bit more each day, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be gargantuan. It doesn't have to be anything, to put you on the cover of Time magazine or to put you on anything will put you on Facebook now. But that's what it's all about. And maybe if we studied the teachings a little bit more in minutia and glean some of these truths that I have shared with you this morning, we might be indeed the better off for it. I have no problem with loving the birds and watching the Kaga lilies bloom and all the rest of it. But my point is, we are here, we are now. And we as a species understand, but we've yet to make it work, that united we stand. It is in our diversification and our unity that we remain strong and we can grow and progress, which is the purpose of life, to evolve. Without that recognition intellectually, without following a certain spiritual practice, you want to call it prayer, call it prayer. I prefer to call it contemplation or meditation, whatever word you want to use. Just know that you can be anything you choose to be. Now, I'm not meaning, in the so-called world, you can go become, a NASA scientist if you've had no education in physics and so forth. I'm saying you can spiritually be what you choose to be. And all the truths, there are no more truths left in the sense there's no more advice to be given. The advice, as I mentioned a little while ago, comes in the Beatitudes. It comes from Corinthians 1:13 about love. It comes from John 4. Or if you don't like the Judeo-Christian orientation, find a Buddhist one, a Jain one, a Baha'i one. It's the same. Have a story to tell you. Because I am a reframer, not a reformer, a reframer. Reformers tend to throw everything out the door. Reframers go, you know, those windows still look pretty good. I think I'm going to keep a couple of those. I have conducted communion services amongst the spiritualists, amongst religious scientists, and even once amongst Unitarian Universalists. Things did not go well. No, actually, in a couple of cases, they went extremely well. But it was interesting because we had a group of people, and some of them were very new. This was when I was in Rochester, New York. I was with my church was All Souls United Church of Religious Science. Very hard to put on a business card. And I had decided to do an Easter commemorative once a year. I did not believe in the service of common union or communion except once a year. To do this in memory of this great man, to do this in recognition of his great teaching, and to do it as a recommitment to what he lived for and what he died for. So, I'm getting a plate of home-baked bread, which I made in my own little machine. I am a creature of technology. Anyway, my bread-making machine. And because I'm sensitive to the fact that some people can drink wine, some people are allergic to alcohol, so I got some grape juice. Well, a week before, one of the members of the congregation came to me and said, Pastor, I can't participate. I said, on moral conviction? Which would have been perfectly fine. I said, no one's demanded to participate. This is just a commemorative celebration of how I would choose to celebrate Easter. She says, no, you don't understand. And this was back when we were just beginning to hear this stuff. What is it? Not hypoglycemic. What is it? Gluten. When you're allergic to wheat. Yeah, gluten, thank you, gluten intolerant. And she says, I can't eat the bread. So I'm thinking, oh dear. And she really wanted to be part of, this communal celebration. So I went out to the health food store and probably spent much more money than they were worth. We got rice cakes, little rice wafers, and they looked just like when I remember as a child, communion wafers. So I peppered 2 or 3 into the thing, and I said to her, I said, Marjorie, remember, when the plate comes by you, you pick the white one, not the one that looks like bread, because the bread will hurt you. So what I didn't do was I didn't say that to anybody else, because she was the only one who identified as the person who would be gluten intolerant. So they passed the trays and they passed the plate, and so it came time, and so we all took our respective, I said some lovely commemorative, if you will, words, and we all took the bread. Fine. Within literally a tenth of a nanosecond, I am hearing in this beautifully calm, very, very quiet sanctuary, much like this one, the cacophonous crunch of rice crackers. Crunch, 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 because 3 or 4 other people had taken the communion wafer, if you will. We had a family who obviously were very traditional. Mom and dad were in their Sunday best. They had a few kids with them. They had their Sunday bonnets. My God, it was like a blast from the 50s. But they decided for whatever reason to come to our church that Sunday. And they took the crunchy ones too. I said, you know, I gotta do something. So I got up, I said, you know, you will go to many churches and maybe you will receive communion at these churches. I said, but this is the only church you will ever come to where you can actually get your communion in regular or extra crispy. My point has been pretty plain. Whether you choose to celebrate Easter, I choose to celebrate Easter in a reframed manner, in a manner that I would hope would bring greater hope, a greater, deeper reality to a deeper meaning, at least for me and so many others who think like me. It is time for us, in my opinion, to sincerely and earnestly strive to, as we do with so many things, we do it with politics, we do it with culture, we do it with something, to look at theology and, if need be, to reframe it to reflect greater growth, greater understanding, and greater ability to be much more than we have chosen to be in the past. This is what it means to be part of the solution to the world, in my opinion, rather than choosing to be part of the problem. So in his name, I wish you a blessed Easter in whatever way you choose to look upon it. And I hope that what I have shared with you has chosen to stimulate your intellect, to refresh your soul, and to give you deeper things to consider in your future spiritual growth. Thank you and bless you. And the crowd roars, yes. Oh, okay. Do we have, before we get to the closing hymn, if I may, I'd rather do the announcements now if I could. Are there any announcements that need to be made?
Yes, I've announced.
Yes, please.
Next week is Easter, and Snodgrass will be here. I believe his topic is going to be about medicine and the indigenous peoples. He will be doing a class afterwards as well. In between service and the class, we are going to have an adult Easter egg hunt. You have to be over 21 to participate. If you get easily offended, you don't have to participate. Then we are going to have a slight change in our potluck. We usually have a potluck at the end of the month, but stewardship is going to be doing coffee hour at the end of the month, so we're going to move potluck to the next, which is May 7th. I'll put that. And I miss it again.
Okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'm okay, just fine. Shared some real serious stuff with you. At least I took it as very serious. And so now I have to give you my parting Easter gift, which is a little bit of Easter humor. And then we will sing our closing hymn and extinguish our chalice. Gentleman just got himself a new car, hot red Camaro. Oh God, this guy thought this was the greatest car in the world. 0 to 60 in 1.2 seconds. Unbelievable. And so he's driving down the road and he decides to open it up full bore, shoots down the road at, a ridiculous rate of speed. And all of a sudden in the distance he sees, oh my God. And he knew what he did. Screeches the car to a halt, gets out, looks on the ground. Oh my God, what have I done? He had just killed the Easter bunny.
Oh, my.
And there he is, bag of eggs strewn about, lifeless, gone. And so he's pounding his head, going, my God, what have I done? I can't believe it. I just know what could have made me go so fast. I don't know. And within a few minutes, a vehicle comes behind him, and there's a lady in the vehicle. She comes out of the car. She goes, what's the matter? She goes, look. Oh my God, you've killed the Easter bunny. I know. What am I going to do? I'll never be able to live with myself. She goes, don't worry. So she goes to the back of her car, opens it up and pulls out an aerosol can. Comes up to the Mr. Easter bunny and sprays him down with the contents of the can, and then puts the can down. And all of a sudden, twitch, twitch, twitch. And he pops up. And not only does he pop up, but he starts to hop away. And then he turns around and he waves. Hop, hop, and he waves. Hop, hop, and waves once more. And then hops off into the forest. The man is incredulous, says, "My dear woman, he was as dead as a doornail. What did you spray him with?" She says, "Oh, it's very simple. I just pulled out a can of my hairspray. It revives dead hair, it instills bounce, and adds permanent wave." All right, I won't give up my day job. Thank you very much. Let us turn in our hymnal to our closing hymn, hymn number 346. 346. And let us rise, those who are ready, willing, and able, and sing a song. Come sing a song with me in celebration of the Easter season. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I may know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I may know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I may know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and rose in the winter time. Thank you. Please be seated. We have gathered together, united in body, in mind, ultimately in infinite spirit, knowing that though we may walk individual ways and unique paths, that we believe that all paths, if sincerely and honestly followed, must certainly lead unto first cause, unto the giver of all good gifts, that sourceless source, that which many call God, what we to call infinite mind. As we have gathered in that unification, we make a covenant that we will go forth. And as we study, whether it be the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth or Gautama the Buddha, or anyone who understands the powerful principle that God is love and those who choose to love shall truly know God, that we will go forth not only to do so for ourselves, but to encourage and inspire others to do likewise as well. It is in so doing that we know that we will experience the joy of living, and we know that we will bring that joy to others as they choose to bring that joy to others as well. This is our prayer. We no longer think in terms of thoughts and prayers in the abstract. We think in terms of action, and we think in terms of what we can actually tangibly do to make it a world that works for everyone. This we say, Amen. Let us repeat the chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen.
I love you from sea and breeze. I love you everywhere. I love you, the golden dawn agrees, as once more she sees daffodils. It's spring again, and birds on the wing again start to sing again the old melody. I love you. That's the song of songs, and it all belongs to you and me.